According to Jeff Passan, Tim Hill signing with the Chicago White Sox, one-year deal, a little less than $2 million. Some might say, well, the Padres can't afford that for Tim Hill, but Tim Hill, he's not coming off of the best season at an ERA over 5, but what I really want to focus on is what he did in 2022. This guy, he was a good pitcher for the Padres. Matchups, Bob Melvin loved using him against lefties. Lefties had an OPS, I think, below 600, well below 600 against lefties. Tim Hill had in 2022. So that was a big season for the Padres, obviously. And Tim Hill, in the postseason, he shined. He didn't give up any runs, earned runs, in the postseason. I think he gave up 1 run against the Dodgers, but it was an unearned run. Him in the community, amazing. He is great friends with Joe Musgrove, so I'm sure Joe is sad to see him actually, officially go. Tim Hill was not given a contract by the Padres. I think it was non-tendered earlier in the offseason, along with Austin Nola, and I think Taylor Colway was in there. So I'm not surprised to see Tim Hill officially go to another team now. The Padres, it just didn't seem like they were going to give Tim Hill, over $1 million to be in that bullpen. I think that they feel like they can bring someone in to be that lefty specialist. They don't have that right now. I mean, who is it? It's a bunch of righties that they have, and then they have Tom Cosgrove, who is that lefty guy. But I feel like Tom Cosgrove is more of a high-leverage situation guy than Tim Hill. He might end up being like Tim Hill and be, matchups not always in high-leverage situations like Tim Hill was this past year. Based on some guys that the Padres bring in. Maybe Cosgrove struggles, and he is that lefty guy. But right now, it doesn't seem like the Padres have that guy. So we'll see if AJ ends up adding to this bullpen with a lefty, or is there a minor league prospect that ends up coming up as a lefty and can be that guy. But there's no one that was more impactful, it feels like, in the community than Tim Hill for sure. And I know that there's Padres fans that are like, I don't care. It's only about what he does on the field, and I get that, but it seemed like every community event, like humanly possible, this guy was at. So I just want to put that out there and just say that I appreciate that as someone that is obviously in San Diego and knows the impact that, players being at these events, like seeing the impact that any big leaguer being at an event with kids or being at an event just to serve the community, that impact that it can have on some of these fans' lives. I think it's pretty cool to see that Tim Hill was there day in, day out. Day offs, being at Petco Park for some events, being at, I think, blood drives and all that. So props to him for doing that. And maybe he'll still train in San Diego in the off season and still call San Diego his home. But I think on the field, he is replaceable. I mean, he had a negative WAR this past year, so he is a replaceable reliever. It's just someone that I think that some fans have grown to love. Some fans are like, yeah, thank goodness that, Tim Hill is not here, because we saw what he did on the field, and we saw, the bad throw against the Pirates in Pittsburgh, right? He just couldn't throw to first base and just didn't have it as much as he did in 2022. So some are like, man, this is a great thing that he's not back. But he did have some really good moments in 2022 for the Padres, and so I do want to recognize that. But yes, I do acknowledge he was a replaceable guy, and we'll see what A.J. Preller can do with this bullpen. Because right now, I mean, Cosgrove is that big lefty, right? There's Robert Suarez, there's Enio De Los Santos, there's Steven Wilson, Cosgrove, lefty, right? That one lefty in there. There's Luis Patino that I guess you could put there. There's Adrian Morejon. He's a lefty, but can you rely on him health-wise, right? Where Tim Hill, it didn't seem like he got hurt a whole lot. I know he was on the IL this past year a little bit, but it seemed like he was always there. So we'll see what other moves AJ makes. Like I've said here, there's a lot. There's outfield, need a couple of outfielders, rotation, bullpen, hopefully another reliever, preferably a lefty. There's a first base DH bat, right? We need lefty bats as well, not just lefty arms, but lefty bats. So there's a lot for AJ to do. As I was talking about on the show earlier today, there's a lot for AJ to do this offseason. But really, I just want to thank Tim Hill. Probably not watching this, but thank you for your service in the community. Thank you for your work in 2022, because those are moments that we're not going to forget. And he's always going to be remembered for that, wanky lefty arm angle that he had. And I think, you know, there were some Padres fans. I remember sometimes at Petco Park, you're sitting in the upper deck and there's these random fans that would be like, "Bring in Tim Hill. Where's Tim Hill? Tim Hill's going to save us." And that was in 22 because of that. That's just what the role he ended up having for this Padres team, it felt like. Bring Tim Hill in as he's sitting there in the bullpen. So I think he'll be missed a little bit. Some fans, again, are like, "Hey, good, he's gone." But I think he'll be missed a little bit. But now he's going with the White Sox. And Chicago, you are getting a pretty darn good human being.